Jordy, I think I found your song. A guy on Twitter just hit me up. Is it Mo Bamba?
Oh. Bastard.
We got about 30 replies saying that it's Mo Bamba. It's
not Mo Bamba.
Mo
Not
Bamba.
Bamba. All right, Cole
Mo
Cubelic
Bamba.
every Friday here on Off the Bench. Missed him the last couple of weeks, but now back with us. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt this weekend. Not the greatest selection of college football games, but it sets up what should be a great turkey week of football. Cole, welcome back, man. Good to have you.
Hey, great to be with you guys. How is everything?
Going good. Trying to get to this cool weather. I saw you woke up to some snow in central Alabama earlier this week. Not as cold down here in South Louisiana, but you know the natives, man. We like the heat and humidity.
Wow,
Yeah,
cool.
apparently I caught some heat inside the LSU facility yesterday. With
That's
my
easy to
tweet
do.
Late last night, a tweet late last night that said we've got Ed O drama on ESPN, and apparently everybody thought something was going on with the LSU head coach. But obviously not the Ed O that I was referencing. So I apologize for that.
No, that's great. It walks me into it because we talked about that in the first hour. What would you make of that scene between Ed Oliver and Major Applewhite on national television?
Ugly, unfortunate, immature. I appreciated the way that Major Applewhite handled it after the game and when he spoke to Laura Rutledge during the game. But, a lot of the things that I've heard, I think, sort of came to life on national television there. And it's a really unfortunate deal. And I think you heard the broadcast crew and especially Jordan Rogers talking about last night of kind of where we are in college football right now. We've seen it in bowl games. We've seen it now in a couple of different instances of how guys are going to do some things differently to prepare for the NFL draft, and how you continue to manage that as far as your football team is concerned feels like it's only going to get more and more difficult. So I hate it for everybody else on that team because they're just trying to go out and win games. And I understand what Ed Oliver has in front of him, but it's a bad look. And here's the really unfortunate part about it for Ed Oliver. There's a couple defensive tackles that are outplaying him this year, mainly one at Alabama and another one at Mississippi State. Yeah. So something like that could easily bump you down 15, 20 draft spots. But there's only so many guys that are drafting the defensive tackle. And if all of a sudden you get something like that and the team says no thanks, and there's two other defensive tackles that they view as equal to you or playing better than you, then you lose a couple $1 million.
I guess my problem with this whole idea, though, of a coach being frustrated with a player for not finishing out the season or the bowl game, what have you, is that coaches are their own worst enemy in this regard. Coaches, at the drop of a hat, will leave a school for a better contract, for more money, for a better opportunity, a better situation. Ed Oliver took a cheap shot against Navy, hurts his knee, and says, look, man, I have a better opportunity. I have money now available. Like you talk about hurting his draft stock. Well, what if he does go get his knee blown out against Tulane last night? I don't know, man. I view this worse. I think this looks worse on Applewhite. And in terms of players not playing in bowl games, coaches don't have a lot to stand on when it comes to talking about being loyal to the team when you see coaches time and time again leave right before the bowl game.
Oh, no, the part about his team that I don't like is that he's shoving one of his teammates while he's trying to get in his coach's ear.
Yeah, no, that was bad. That's where Oliver was in the wrong. I just think
calm it down, and he's getting at his teammates too. I mean, listen, I understand Ed Oliver's perspective, but and I think we can all agree that the whole jacket thing is just dumb.
Yeah.
But coaches have rules, and things are in place for a reason, and those jackets are there for guys who play because it's going to be cold when they come off. I mean, coaches are going to stick to their guidelines that they put in place, and I'm cool with that, and I agree with it. But you flip out and lose your mind and shove your teammates so you can go try to get in the face of an authoritative figure that is coaching the rest of your team. I don't care how you spin it, T-Bob. That's a bad look, man.
I agree. I mean, it's not a good look for Ed Oliver. And I think that it wasn't about the jacket. It seems like, in pregame, he's like running slants and catching pass routes. And I think that's the type of stuff that kind of pushed him to the limit that says, look, man, if you're not going to be a part of the team and you're not going to do all this stuff, give me the jacket.
It's kind of like Rivers said, though, like just because he's not playing, like, can he remove the emotion from it? Like, is he not allowed to be out there with his teammates, like getting people ready for the game? Houston obviously played very well, so it wasn't like he was a negative on the team. Look, it looks bad on everybody. I guess I just side with Oliver more in this situation.
Cole, you were in Arkansas last week with LSU on the field versus the Hogs. Throughout the week, there's been some negative feedback on LSU's performance. What'd you make of the Tigers last weekend?
I thought they were fine. I thought it was what Coach O wants LSU football to be. They ran the ball, they were physical, and they played good defense. Now, you had a couple guys in the secondary go down. Obviously, the Christian Fulton injury is going to be one that looks like it's going to hurt them for a couple of weeks. But I think that had a little bit to do with Arkansas finding a little bit of rhythm late, finding a way to climb back in that game. I think most of the guys on the LSU team felt like they had that game in hand early in the third quarter. So I don't hit the panic button based on what the final score is, like a lot of other folks have or are doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought that's who LSU is. I mean, they went out and played to who they are and what their strengths are, and handled their business. And bouncing off of a game that so many people put so much into emotionally, mentally, and for the future of the program's perspective, the previous week against Alabama, I'm always impressed when you can come and bounce back and play a good game, even if it's a lesser tier opponent, because there are a lot of teams that would have been really flat. There are a lot of teams that wouldn't have shown up, emotionally wouldn't have been into it, and wouldn't have a lot of life when they played that football game. So I left that game feeling pretty good about LSU as a football team.
Yeah, while the final score was close, LSU really felt like they were in control the entire time. Offensively, I think LSU wants to get better, like maybe into next year. But yeah, like I agree with you. This year, that's who you are offensively. Cole, let's look at some of the other SEC games this weekend. How about that big 2:30 matchup, Missouri versus Tennessee? It actually is kind of look. Not from a win-loss perspective, but from an equally matched perspective, I think it's interesting. Who do you think wins there?
I think it's fairly interesting because, I mean, who would have thought that Jeremy Pruitt had this Tennessee team anywhere near bowl eligibility? I didn't. I wouldn't, because I know the kind of guys that he had on that team. And I know the personnel he's got on that team, especially up front on the offensive line. And to do it the last few weeks without Trey Smith, it's pretty impressive what Jeremy's done. And not a lot of people are going to talk about it, but it's a heck of a coaching job that staff has been able to piece together there in Knoxville. And now, all of a sudden, Missouri, similar to last year, looks like they could be getting hot here late in the season. Nice win at Florida. Kind of had to scratch and claw to pull one out against Vanderbilt, but they've got Emmanuel Hall back on the outside. I think Drew Lock and company will be a little bit too much for Tennessee, because Terry Beckner and the interior of that defensive line have been very disruptive for Missouri. And I think Barry Odom continues to sort of cap off another very good season in Columbia. Not a great season, and maybe a little bit lesser than what people had kind of hoped for with Drew Lock returning. But I will tell you what you're going to see in this game. Two offensive coordinators that have done a really nice job this year that nobody's talking about. Derek Dooley has done a nice job at Missouri, and Tyson Helton's done a really nice job at Tennessee. Nobody's talking about those two because they're not competing for any championships, but those two OCs have really done a nice job working around some of their deficiencies this season.
So real quick on the other two SEC games this week, Ole Miss Vanderbilt. Who you got?
Well, I think if you're Vanderbilt, you just find a way to limit the explosive play. And there's so many ways, and I think the health of Scotty Phillips is obviously going to be big. Is he back? Can he help? Can he help the ground game for Ole Miss? He goes out early against A&M. If he's in the game, they got a much better chance to win that football game. So if you can limit the explosive plays in your Vanderbilt, they can shorten the game offensively, because they're going to go shifts, motions. They're going to huddle. Kyle Shermer, for the most part, makes really good decisions, doesn't put his team in bad spots. So I think Vanderbilt has probably a better chance to get this game than people would imagine, but it's a heavy task on the back end of that defense to try to limit the amount of explosive plays that Ole Miss usually churns out every week.
And then there's Arkansas, Mississippi State, but I mean, I'm guessing here that you think Mississippi State rolls them.
I would think so. And here's the thing: the Arkansas players have not thrown in the towel. They have not shut it
That's
down.
fair.
They still play hard, and I think you kind of saw it against LSU. Now, I know LSU did some things from a game plan perspective and had some injuries that allowed Arkansas to get back in that game, but you still got to have kids that are fighting. You still have to have kids that are giving you good effort to be able to come back and even make that an intriguing game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So I think Cheyenne O'Grady is a really nice tight end. They've got their quarterback in Ty Story. If Rakeem Boyd is healthy, He can be explosive in the backfield. And the defense as a unit is not playing great ball, but they have some individuals that are. Kelvin Aguim's playing good ball up front. Dre Greenlaw's playing good ball up front. They got another linebacker that leads the SEC in tackles. So
I know.
Scooter Harris is playing good ball at linebacker. Randy Ramsey can get it off the edge. It's kind of weird that when you put the film on, you see some of these individuals that are playing really well, but for some reason as a unit, they can't seem to consistently get it done.
Now, Cole, let's go ahead and look to next week, because really that's where LSU fans' heads are already at, and it makes sense. There's a ton on the line for this program and kind of the fan confidence on this program going into College Station next week. On paper, A&M does not look like a very good matchup for LSU. And in fact, a lot of the analytics sites have A&M as a very slight favorite, basically a coin flip, maybe slightly favoring A&M. What's your read on Aggies versus Tigers?
Well, I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is how healthy is that LSU secondary, because they can make that a very different game. Because if they're able to utilize less numbers on the back end and the majority of those DBs are healthy, that puts a lot of pressure on the run game. And somehow they've been able to really find ways to get Travion going here recently. And I don't say somehow because of Travion. I say somehow because that offensive line is not great. They're okay, but they're not great. And I think that's where the mismatch would be, is if you can get Fehoko healthy and you get Rashard Lawrence in there and Devin White's back, and all of a sudden that's not an offensive line that's really going to push that LSU front seven around. So I think it depends on the health of the secondary. I think a lot of that game will come down to the LSU offensive line. If they have a good day and they don't give up one-on-one losses, they're not busting assignments, things of that nature, they can win that football game. But it is a much better front seven than anybody talks about. Much better. I mean, Daylon Mack, Matabuke, Kingsley Kiki, Arturo Alaka, they've got linebackers and defensive linemen that move around, that play well, that are disruptive, that can rush the passer. So I think, you mentioned it earlier, T-Bob, part of the plan has been a lot of max protection, a lot of 6, 7, 8-man protection for Joe Burrow. Probably going to continue to have that, where the advantage is if you give him that time, that A&M secondary is just not good. Bottom line, they don't play good football. So Jefferson could have a big day. Maybe a couple backs out of the backfield have a big day. But Joe Burrow, if given time, should be able to find success against that A&M secondary.
Yeah, hopefully they'll send the backs out on routes this week. They need to get away from this. 7-man's been the worst for them. But Cole, thank you so much, man. As always, Cole Cubelic at Cole Cubelic on Twitter. Catch him on SEC Network. Where are you going to be this weekend?
Nashville.
I'll be in Nashville.
Okay.
Ole Miss at Vanderbilt, yeah.
Bundle up, man. Have a good call. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.